All right, let's get into it. Every time you see a shockingly good recommendation on a streaming service, or get a business report, or chat with an AI, there's this hidden powerhouse chugging away behind the scenes. And that's what we're talking about today: data pipelines. They're basically the invisible engine of our entire digital world. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you're talking about old school business dashboards or the latest, greatest generative AI models. If you don't have a solid, dependable way to get your data from point A to point B, well, none of it's going to work. So it's a term that gets thrown around all the time, but what does it actually mean? I mean, how do you take all this messy, raw information from a dozen different places and somehow magically turn it into something useful? That's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so when you boil it all down, a data pipeline follows this classic pattern: ETL. First, you extract the raw data from wherever it lives. Then, you transform it to make it clean and useful. And finally, you load it into its destination. Now, you might also hear about ELT, which just flips those last two steps. The main takeaway here is that since data storage is so incredibly cheap now, we're in this new era of store it all first, figure it out later. That one little concept is the key to everything we're about to talk about. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with why this stuff is the secret sauce for modern AI. Then we'll walk through the three big stages of any pipeline: gathering the raw stuff, refining it into gold, and having a conductor to manage the whole orchestra. And then we'll tie it all together to see the actual payoff. Right, so let's jump in with the biggest topic on the planet right now: AI. Here's the thing. The real value in those huge language models comes from fine-tuning them on super clean, curated datasets. In other words, AI is built on a foundation of data transformation. Its success, its intelligence, it all depends on the quality of the fuel you put in the tank. So, where does it all begin? With ingestion. This is about collecting all the raw materials. I want you to think of it like an oil refinery. Before you can make high-performance gasoline, you first have to get all that crude oil from a bunch of different wells all over the world. So, why are we even able to gather so much data these days? Well, these two charts tell the whole story. Look at the left. The cost to store a gigabyte of data just fell off a cliff over the years. And on the right, the cost of computing power did the exact same thing. This was the big bang for the modern data world. It made it possible to just grab everything first and worry about what questions to ask later. But here's the catch. You can't just hook up the fire hose and hope for the best. Before a single byte of data is ingested, engineers have to put on their detective hats. They go through a critical checklist for every single source. Who are the people we need to work with? What's the end goal for this data? Is it coming in once a day, or is it a constant stream? Getting these answers right up front is what separates a reliable pipeline from a broken one. Okay, so we've collected all our raw materials. Now for the really cool part, the magic, if you will, the transformation stage. This is where we take all that raw, messy, sometimes totally unreliable data, and we start refining it into something pure, something valuable, something like gold. And one of the most popular blueprints for doing this is something called the medallion architecture. It's a really smart framework that gives us this clear three-step approach to making our data better and better at each stage. So here's how it works. You start with the bronze layer. This is just the raw, untouched data, a perfect copy of the source, warts and all. From there, you move it to the silver layer. Here's where we start to clean things up, filter out the junk, and maybe add some useful context. And finally, you get to the gold layer. This is the promised land: pristine, business-ready data, perfectly aggregated and ready for serious analytics and AI. So how do we actually get from bronze to gold? We use a whole toolbox of different techniques. For example, just imagine an e-commerce website. We might be filtering out clicks that we know are from bots. We might be enriching user profiles with location data. We could be structuring raw click data into nice, clean tables, or aggregating sales into daily summaries, or even anonymizing user IDs to protect their privacy. Each one of these is a small step in that refining process. Now, with all these different jobs for ingesting and transforming data, a complex pipeline can start to look like a giant, chaotic factory. To make it all work, you need a master conductor, someone making sure every single piece of the puzzle runs in the right order and at exactly the right time. And that conductor has a name: data orchestration. You can think of it as the brain of the pipeline. It's the automation that schedules everything, that manages all the dependencies, making sure task B doesn't even start until task A is completely finished, and it handles any errors that might pop up. You'll often hear engineers talk about something called a DAG. It stands for Directed Acyclic Graph, which sounds way more complicated than it actually is. Seriously. It's just a flowchart. It's a map that shows exactly which tasks depend on other tasks. It's the blueprint for the path our data is going to take. That's it. All right, so we've walked through the whole process, gathering the data, transforming it, and conducting the whole symphony. Now let's bring it full circle and look at the real-world payoff for all this invisible work. So why do we go through all this trouble? Because that gold data we worked so hard to create, that's what powers everything. It's what fuels the accurate business reports that CEOs use to make multi-million-dollar decisions. It's what creates those high-quality data sets you need to train machine learning models. And yeah, of course, it's what lets us build reliable and truly helpful generative AI. And this is what it's all for. All of that incredibly complex behind-the-scenes engineering is designed to do one thing: produce clear, reliable, and actionable insights. A great data pipeline takes the absolute chaos of raw data and turns it into the clarity that actually drives a business forward. So, to wrap it all up, data pipelines really are the silent, tireless engines of our time. They are the essential plumbing that makes our data-driven world possible, quietly turning raw information into real value every single second of every single day. And that leaves us with a really interesting question to chew on. As the amount of data in the world keeps exploding and AI just gets smarter and smarter, the demands on these pipelines are only going to get crazier. The very definition of what it means to extract, transform, and load data, well, it's changing right in front of our eyes.